Welcome, dear learners. Today I am going to talk about the conservation of biodiversity in India from 1947 to date. That is, from 1947 to 2025. Since gaining independence in 1947, India's approach to biodiversity conservation has evolved into a comprehensive and dynamic efforts to safeguard its rich natural heritage. Blessed with immense diversity in flora and fauna, along with the ecosystems, the country quickly recognized the urgent need to protect these resources from growing threats such as deforestation, habitat destruction, or exploitation and pollution. Over the decades, India has developed robust scientific, legal, and community-based strategies to conserve biodiversity while promoting sustainable use. These national initiatives are further strengthened by international collaborations and commitments, reflecting India's deep commitment to preserving its biological wealth for future generations. In the early decades after independence, that is from 1947 to 1970s, India's conservation efforts primarily focused on the protection of wildlife and forests. The government emphasized the creation and expansion of protected areas, leading to the establishment of several national parks and wildlife sanctuaries aimed at safeguarding iconic species such as tigers and elephants. The Indian Forest Act of 2019-27 continued to serve as a main legal framework for managing and regulating forest use. During this period, Jim Corbett National Park, established earlier in 1936, gained prominence as a pioneering model for wildlife conservation. Importantly, these efforts marked the recognition of forests as a vital ecological and national resources, laying the foundation of India's modern conservation movement. During 1970s and 1980s, India made major strides in wildlife conservation through strong legislative and policy measures. The landmark Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 provided a comprehensive legal framework for protection of species, habitats, and ecosystems, marking a turning point in national conservation efforts. It categorized species into different schedules based on their level of endangerment and established strict penalties for poaching and illegal trade. Following this, the government launched Tiger Project in 1973 to rescue Bengal tiger from near extinction. This pioneering initiative created dedicated tiger reserves across the country, focusing on habitat restoration, scientific monitoring, and anti-poaching encroachment, becoming one of India's most successful conservation programs. In 1980s, India further strengthened its wildlife conservation efforts. Project Elephant, formally conceptualized in 1992, was initiated to protect elephant habitats and address the growing issue of human-elephant conflict. During this period, the protected area network expanded significantly to safeguard diverse ecosystems and species. The number of national parks increased dramatically from around 5 in 1950s to over 100 by 1980s, while the network of wildlife sanctuaries also grew, covering critical habitats across the country. These measures collectively enhanced habitat protection, promoted species recovery, and laid the groundwork for the modern conservation strategies in India. Between 1980s and 1990s, India strengthened forest conservation through key legislations and programs. The Forest Conservation Act of 1980 regulated the diversion of land, that is forest land, for non-forest purposes, requiring central government approval for industrial or developmental projects within forest areas. During this period, national afforestation and soil conservation programs were launched to restore degraded forests and enhance ecological services such as soil fertility, water retention, and biodiversity support. Importantly, this era also saw the early recognition of community participation through joint forest mechanism, which encouraged local communities to actively engage in forest protection and sustainable resource management. In 1990s, India strengthened its commitment to global biodiversity conservation through active participation in international agreements. In 1992, India ratified the Convention on Biological Diversity, pledging to conserve biological diversity, ensuring the sustainable use of its components, and promote fair and equitable sharing of benefits derived from genetic resources. Additionally, India became the signatory to other key global environment agreements, include CITES, that is Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, to regulate trade in endangered species, the Ramsar Convention to protect wetlands for international support for international importance, and participation in UNESCO's Biosphere Reserve programs that integrate conservation with sustainable development at ecosystem level. In the 2000s, India reinforced its biodiversity governance through the Biological Diversity Act 2002, which established a National Biodiversity Authority, state biodiversity boards, and biological diversity management committees to oversee conservation and sustainable use. A key focus of ACT is access and benefit sharing, ensuring equitable benefits from the use of biological resources. During this period, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan was developed to guide sustainable management and conservation priorities. India also emphasized that community-based approaches include the creation of people's biodiversity registers, empowering tribal and rural communities to actively participate in documenting, conserving, and sustainably managing their local biodiversity. From 2010 to present, India has advanced its biodiversity conservation through modern targeted programs and technological integration. Species-specific initiatives include Project Snow Leopard in 2009 for Himalayan species, the Crocodile Conservation Project, and Marine Turtle Conservation, focusing on protecting vulnerable and endangered species. Habitat and ecosystem conservation efforts such as mangrove restoration and wetland conservation programs aims to preserve critical ecosystems and their services. Modern technologies like GIS, remote sensing, drones, and camera traps are increasingly used for monitoring populations and habitats. Additionally, community and NGO-led initiatives promote forest-based livelihoods, ecotourism, and citizen science, fostering local participation in sustainable biodiversity management. India is home to four global biodiversity hotspots, that is Himalaya, Indo-Burma, Sundaland, including the Nicobar Islands and Western Ghats, which are rich in endemic species and critical ecosystems. To safeguard these regions, India has developed an extensive protected area network comprising of 106 national parks, 573 wildlife sanctuaries, 131 conservation reserves, and 96 community reserves. Additionally, 18 biosphere reserves across the country integrate conservation with sustainable development, serving as a model regions for balancing ecosystem protection, ecological protection, research, and community engagement. Together, these efforts form the backbone of India's strategy to preserve its unique biodiversity. India's biodiversity faces several pressing challenges in the present day. Habitat loss and fragmentation due to urban expansion, mining, and agriculture activities continue to disrupt ecosystems and threaten several species. And climate change is altering habitats and shifting species distribution, while pollution of water, air, and soil further degrades ecosystems. The spread of invasive alien species competes with the native flora and fauna, often leading to ecological imbalance. Additionally, overexploitation of resources, including unsustainable fishing, hunting, lodging, continues to pressure wildlife populations. Looking ahead, India's biodiversity conservation efforts must focus on strengthening legal enforcement and ecological monitoring to ensure effective protection of species and habitats. Expanding protected area network in underrepresented ecosystems will safeguard critical and vulnerable habitats. The integration of modern technologies such as GIS, remote sensing, and artificial intelligence can enhance biodiversity mapping and population monitoring. Promoting community-driven conservation will link ecological protection with sustainable livelihoods, empowering local populations. Finally, increasing public awareness and environmental education is essential to foster a culture of conservation ethics, ensuring the future generations value and actively participate in preserving India's rich biodiversity. Some key takeaways from the lecture: India's biodiversity conservation journey encompasses wildlife protection, forest management, legislation, and community participation, reflecting a multifaceted approach to preserving its natural heritage. Project Tiger in 1973 marked the start of modern species-specific conservation programs, setting a precedent for targeted wildlife conservation initiatives. Biological Diversity Act of 2002 institutionalized biodiversity management, creating a structured framework for sustainable use and protection. Today, the active engagement of local communities combined with the integration of modern technologies such as GIS, drones, and citizen science is shaping innovative and effective conservation strategies for the 21st century, ensuring the protection of India's unique biodiversity for generations to come. To conclude with, since independence, India has achieved remarkable progress in biodiversity conservation, evolving from early wildlife protection measures to comprehensive legislation frameworks and community-based initiatives. The country has consistently worked to balance development with ecological preservation, recognizing that healthy ecosystems are vital for survival. Sustaining India's biodiversity is essential not only for environmental stability, but also for cultural heritage, economic prosperity, and social well-being. Continued commitment to conservation, scientific management, and public participation will ensure that India's rich natural heritage remains resilient, supporting both present and future generations. Thank you for watching.